Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk a bit about the agency problem. So the agency problem is the conflict of interest between managers, shareholders, and lenders. So notice that the conflict of interest. This doesn't mean that they actually come to direct opposition with each other or things like that necessarily in an open sense, but it basically can mean that what the manager wants to do and what the shareholders want to do can be different and pointing in different directions. So the firm is owned by the shareholders. So in theory, the managers are operating the firm for the benefit of the shareholders and are technically sort of, in a sense, kind of employed by the shareholders to operate the firm for their interests. So the problem arises when the managers are not operating the firm for their interests, the interests of the shareholders. Now, I also have lenders in here as well. And so lenders, when they lend money to the firm, they have oftentimes certain stipulations or interests and so forth. And they are perhaps going to be concerned about risks the firm is taking, et cetera. And the choices that might be best for the shareholders necessarily always be best for the lenders, and similarly for the managers and lenders. So that's kind of the idea behind the agency problem. Now, as it relates to the discussion I'm going to start here in a moment, I'm going to be focusing primarily upon the conflict of interest between shareholders and managers. But it is worth noting that there can be an agency problem as it relates to kind of lenders and so forth. So the goal of the financial manager is to maximize long-term shareholder wealth. So we know that that's our goal. But the problem that we can run into is that managers may have incentives to make decisions which benefit themselves over shareholders. Let me give you sort of an example. What if the manager has an incentive for hitting a specific sales goal? And so he's going to get a big bonus if he hits a specific sales goal. Well, the temptation might be to think, well, that's great. I mean, how could that not be in the interest of shareholders? Well, what if that sales goal is not crafted very well, and the manager drops the prices drastically in order to sell a lot more volume? And if the incentive is for the manager to sell a certain number of units, not necessarily focusing on profitability, then the manager could drop the price, sell a bunch of units, collect a bonus, and the shareholders are earning a whole lot less money per unit of sales than they should be because they just sold a bunch of units at a discount. Hopefully you're kind of getting the sense of, well, that's not quite what we wanted to do, right? So that's kind of the idea behind the agency problem here. So some of the ways to address the agency problem. Well, in some cases, shareholders can get directly involved and basically tell managers, we don't want to do this. Or in some cases, they can get involved with the threat of firing and basically say, well, if you don't behave in certain ways, you don't achieve certain outcomes, et cetera, then we, the shareholders, may fire you. And the way they could do that would be they could vote on who they want on the board of directors, and then the board of directors could in turn fire the managers. And so it's possible to do that. It's also possible to work on the compensation structure associated with the managers and try to adjust the compensation structure. So back to my example, instead of compensating based upon the number of units sold, maybe we can compensate based on the profits earned by the company. But even that has some issues. So let's talk about that for just briefly by way of kind of hopefully conveying the idea of how this can get challenging. So if the company is going to give the manager or CEO a bonus for hitting a certain profit target, if the CEO is rolling into the last month of the fiscal year and is slightly behind that profit target, one of the things you could do is do something like withhold all R&D spending for the month. And that's something a manager could do and just not spend on R&D for the month. And that's possible. The company could do that. They can just suspend research and development expenditures. And that might make it possible for the company to hit the earnings target. And then by hitting the earnings target, then the manager gets a bonus. But if you think about it, cutting off research and development spending is probably going to adversely affect long-term product development, et cetera, which is going to be bad for the shareholders in the long run. And now we're back to a situation where the managers are making a choice that's best for them, but not necessarily best for the interests of the shareholder. And therein lies the agency problem. So it turns out it can be difficult to try to completely address the agency problem. There's not one perfect way to do it. So that's why I have this et cetera on there. There are multiple different attempts and ways that this could possibly be done, but there isn't necessarily a perfect way to do it. But the general idea is that one of the things that companies should try to do is to try to address that agency problem and get managers thinking like shareholders and making decisions like shareholders. So that's kind of the idea. All right, hopefully this video has been helpful. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.